Jobless father arrived dirty at son's big game, where scouts from top colleges were there, waiting to see his performance for scholarship. It was the most important day of Jacob's life. He had dreamed about this moment for years, the big game, the one that could change everything for him. Scouts from top colleges were there, waiting to see his performance, and the possibility of a full scholarship loomed just ahead. But Jacob's mind wasn't on the game. It wasn't on the victory, or the trophy, or even the cheering crowd. Instead, it was on something far more personal. He scanned the stands, looking for one person, his father. Ethan, Jacob's father, wasn't like the other parents. Most of the people in the crowd were well off, well-dressed, and excited to watch their children play. Ethan, though, had been struggling for months. He'd lost his job almost a year ago, and since then, life had become an uphill battle. He was once a skilled factory worker, but after the plant closed down, there were no other jobs available in town. No matter how hard he searched, no one was hiring. The man who once provided everything for his family was now just trying to make ends meet through odd jobs and backbreaking labor. Ethan didn't tell Jacob the worst of it. He couldn't bear to show just how hard things had gotten. Every time he managed to find a gig, no matter how demeaning, no matter how dirty, he took it. The jobs barely paid, and by the time he finished for the day, he was always covered in dirt, grease, and exhaustion. He didn't have the luxury of looking clean and presentable, but he worked just to scrape together bus fare to make it to his son's game. He wouldn't miss it for the world. But that didn't make the shame any easier to carry. Jacob knew what his father was going through. He could see it every day when his dad would come home, shoulders slumped, hands dirty, and eyes tired. The house was quieter now, money was tight, and the once carefree atmosphere had turned into something heavy. Yet despite everything, his father promised him, "I'll be there for your big game, son, no matter what." Jacob loved his father deeply, but he couldn't help but feel conflicted. What would his teammates think when they saw his father in the stands, looking the way he did? Would they mock him? Would they judge him the way they had judged Jacob in private for months? You see, while Jacob was the star of the team, and everyone admired him for his skill, not everyone knew his family's situation. They saw him as the talented player, the one destined for greatness, but they didn't know about the quiet struggles at home. Jacob had kept it all to himself. He wanted to protect his father from any additional humiliation, and he didn't want anyone's pity. His father was a proud man, but Jacob could sense how much the loss of his job had crushed him. Yet here they were, on the biggest day of Jacob's life, and Jacob couldn't stop thinking about what would happen when everyone saw his father. The game was underway, and the tension was palpable. It wasn't just the crowd that was on edge. Jacob's mind was racing. His eyes darted between the field and the stands, trying to spot his father. He knew his dad would show up, but part of him dreaded it. What if his teammates or the other parents saw his father and started whispering, started judging? Jacob shook off the thought, trying to focus on the game, but his heart wasn't in it. And then halfway through the first half, he saw him. Ethan arrived at the stadium, but not like the other parents. He wasn't wearing crisp clothes or cheering loudly. Instead, he stood at the far edge of the bleachers, near the back, dressed in his old work clothes, covered in grime and dirt. The spectators near him turned their heads, whispering among themselves. Some parents shot him judgmental looks, wondering why someone like him was there. But Ethan didn't care about the stares. He didn't care about the judgment. He was there for one reason: to see his son. Jacob saw his father standing alone, and his heart sank. The man he loved, the man who had given up everything for him, stood there, looking out of place among the wealthier families. His teammates' parents exchanged glances. Some of them whispered cruelly, judging him without knowing his story. And Jacob, standing on the field, could feel the weight of it all. The shame, the fear, the love, and the pride. It all collided at once. For a moment, Jacob froze. He lost track of the game, and all he could see was his father, tired and worn out from the struggles of life. But then something shifted in Jacob. The fear of judgment faded, and a new emotion took its place. Determination. He wasn't just playing for the Scouts, for the scholarship, or for the win. He was playing for his father, the man who had sacrificed everything so he could have this moment. Jacob's focus returned, and he threw himself into the game with everything he had. Every pass, every sprint, every tackle was for Ethan. He played like his life depended on it, like his father's pride depended on it. The tension in the game built up, and soon the crowd was roaring as the clock ticked down to the final moments. And then, they won. Jacob's team had done it. They had won the championship, and Jacob had secured the victory with a final, breathtaking play. The crowd erupted in cheers, the announcers praised his skill, and his teammates hoisted him up in celebration. But Jacob's eyes weren't on the trophy. They weren't on his teammates or the roaring crowd. His eyes were on his father, standing at the back of the bleachers, quiet and alone. After the celebrations died down, Jacob was handed the microphone to give his victory speech. The crowd was still buzzing with excitement, eager to hear the words of their star player. But Jacob's mind was elsewhere. He looked at the microphone in his hand, and then back at his father. And in that moment, he made a decision. This wasn't just about him. It wasn't about the team, or the trophy, or the scholarship. This was about his father. Jacob raised the microphone to his lips, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "I've been waiting for this moment my whole life," he began. The crowd cheered, but Jacob raised his hand for silence. "But this isn't just my moment. There's someone here today who deserves the real credit. Someone who has been fighting for me every single day. And I think it's time everyone knows who that person is." The crowd was silent now, hanging on his every word. "That person is my father." Jacob continued, his voice steady. "He's standing right there at the back of the stands. He doesn't look like the other parents. He's not dressed like them, and he's not cheering like them, but he's here. And that's more than I could ever ask for." The crowd turned, looking toward the back of the bleachers, where Ethan stood, still covered in dirt and grime. Some parents whispered, others looked ashamed for having judged him. But Jacob wasn't finished. He took a deep breath and continued. "My father hasn't had a steady job in almost a year. He's been working odd jobs just to make ends meet. He's been doing everything he can to make sure I get a chance at this moment. He didn't care about how he looked or what people thought. He just cared about being here for me. And for that, I am more proud of him than words can express." Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience, but Jacob pressed on. "You all see the dirt, the work clothes, the tired face. But what you don't see is the strength, the love, and the sacrifice. My father is the hardest working man I know, and without him, I wouldn't be standing here today." The silence broke, and the crowd began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder, until the entire stadium was on its feet, giving a standing ovation not to Jacob, but to Ethan. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he walked toward the field, where Jacob stood waiting. The two embraced, father and son, in front of everyone. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the dirt, not the struggles, not the judgment. All that mattered was the love and respect between them. Jacob had won the game, but it was Ethan who had won the respect of the crowd. And as they walked off the field together, father and son side by side, the entire stadium knew one thing for sure. True success isn't measured by the trophies we win, but by the sacrifices we make for the people we love.